Time to play the game!
Five, four, three, two, one.
Welcome to our world. Turn your CDs up.
Hey, hold on. Whoa. Johnny, we've got a guest. We've got the great. Oh my God, we got our first guest on the show. Yo, 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 welcome to the Delinquents Show. At home with the Delinquents. Johnny, where'd you get this guy from?
I don't know where this fella's popped up from, but I'm glad he has.
I'm sure we must have just got him from climbing up one of those mountains. I don't know where he's like in Everest. Hey, it is with our great pleasure, an absolute pleasure to welcome legendary referee, explorer, entrepreneur. There's more. I don't even know what else to say. BOB BHANIA, welcome to the.
Hey Saint, how are you?
I'm absolutely amazing. How are you? Welcome to the Delinquent Show. You are our first major guest from this.
Well, that's kind of you to say. That's kind of you to say. But no, like, hey John, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I was just thinking. I remember the first time not the first time, we were in Rome at the Olympic Stadium. I went to referee. You were there. Your dad was the mechanic, and the legendary Rats from Rome came and joined us.
Yeah, the rats when we went
It wasn't
into
just
our
the
room.
rats, though, was it? If you remember, outside the gate, there was all the brass lining up at night.
I know. Yeah, good days, good days.
Oh, good.
Days.
Hey,
Good to catch up with you guys. Been a long time.
Yeah, Bob, it's good to see you. We know you've been doing a lot, and we got lots to talk about. So we're gonna crack on.
We did actually see you the other day, Bob.
Go on.
On one of the games we uploaded from 2002, you were refereeing Kitayoshi.
Oh yeah, God, I did the final there.
The Gold Cup, yep, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. I tell you what, though, I think wasn't that the time when Sandy Blythe retired, wasn't it? Was that Sandy Blythe's last game?
Yeah,
remember Sandy?
it was.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I do believe it was his last game there.
Yeah, I gave him the match ball, and then I got a bollocking for it.
Hey,
you know,
it's always good to be.
No one give me one, but I come home with one.
Me too.
But I tell you what, he was one great guy.
Yeah,
One
he was great.
guy.
So,
you know, he gave me, he wrote his book, Blythe Spirit.
Yeah.
And he gave book number one to who was the GB coach? There was a
Fitness.
No. The guy who was from Australia.
Murray.
Murray. He gave copy number one to him and copy number two to me and signed it. And I always look at that book and he signed it. He said, "Shit happens, Bob. Good luck."
Yeah.
And then sadly he passed away. So tragic circumstances. Anyway. So let's go back to.
So Bob, tell me, how did you get into the sport of not refereeing, but wheelchair refereeing? Because I know you're a very prominent referee in the able-bodied game, but in the wheelchair refereeing.
Well, it's funny enough. I started with mini basketball. I played for Highbury Hawks, and a guy called Tom Payne, you'll remember. He ran 10 able-bodied teams. I played mini basketball at the time. This was early 70s, and he had 2 wheelchair teams. And Tom, basically, he had a great club. And I don't know if you remember, Tom, but his mum and dad used to do the table. They used to do the sandwich, teas and coffees afterwards. And he got you involved in the sport. And he taught you about the sport. I mean, great education. And not only that, but you got involved in refereeing. You was 10, 11 years old. You were refereeing wheelchair games. But people loved it. And there were the days of the old chairs, I mean, really solid chairs.
Yeah, the Everest and Jennings and the Hofmeisters. Those sort of chairs, yeah.
You know, and then that, and then you know, Tom and I were great friends because I played quite a lot of able-bodied basketball, but I also knew because if I remember right, I used to go and referee for Tom because he used to run a club out of Bounds Green by the swimming pool. And if I remember right, I think he had a lot of juniors, and I think Andy Deere was one of his players. He did a lot of stuff. And then, you know, so realistically, I had a lot of interest right from the start with wheelchair basketball. And then there was a guy called I.W.B.Delinquents, who was a good friend of ours. He was a great car dealer, and his daughter in 1979, Camilla, she got killed in a car accident. And so he asked us and a number of us to raise a lot of money, and we raised the money to build the sports centre at Royal National Orthopaedic, at the Aspire Centre.
Aspire Centre,
An actual sports centre.
Yeah. So if you have a look at the end of one of the walls, it's got, you know, memory of Camilla Botner, you know. And then I met Tom again because Tom used to referee there, and I've got a feeling, I've got a feeling the first team that played out there was that Force that Ian Laker ran, or I'm not sure if it was
Hurricane Force.
Yeah,
Hurricane Force.
Yeah. So I think they had training there, and then the Hurricane Force moved it in and played there. I think there was a team before them, Stanmore or something like that. But yeah,
that's right. Yeah, Stanmore. Yeah, he played there. So I then got involved again. And it was basically Tom sort of met me again and said, look, get involved. And that would have been early 80s. I think the sports centre opened in 83, so it was 83 that time. But it was quite a pivotal time because I was a bit of a rebel, you know, because I loved sport, but I was also very much didn't like injustice. So, you know, at that time I was out marching against the National Front. I was outside the South African Embassy every weekend if I wasn't playing sport, you know, protesting against apartheid. And then there was the other side of it with the wheelchair side. And, you know, I met I just think is one of the greatest guys in wheelchair sport. He's Gordon Perry. And, you know, I've got great friends with Gordon. You know, I mean, I've respected him, and he's just one of the best guys. So much, how can I put it, underrated, but under how can I put it, under received. Do you know what I mean? Now, I remember talking to Gordon years and years ago. I think it was 83, 84. And, you know, Gordon was a trailblazer, real trailblazer. And he was doing, because at that time, the London Marathon was two. There was a wheelchair race, and then there was the a marathon race, and Chris Brayshaw was the head of it. And then they didn't want wheelchairs in there. And then so I spoke to Gordon and pushed him a little bit. And then there was an interview, a radio debate with Chris Brayshaw and Gordon roasted him. And basically the deputy head of GLC at the time said, look, we've listened to this. If you don't have wheelchair racing in the marathon, we're pulling the funding. There won't be a marathon. So literally 4 weeks before the 1984, I think it was, marathon, they'll have wheelchairs in.
And Gordon won the first one.
Gordon won the first one. But the thing is, though, you know, there's things that people do as small things that have massive effect, you know, the butterfly effect. Because, you know, we look at wheelchair marathons now all over the world. If you go right back, if it hadn't been for Gordon, they wouldn't have existed. It would never happened, you know.
Yeah.
So, and people don't realise it. You know, they watch the marathon. Oh, you know, so and so's won, and so's this. So, but you know, you go right back, and it was that interview with Gordon.
That one moment.
That was it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So that's why you know, we introduced him into our Hall of Fame, Gordon, because we know what sort of legend that guy is.
Even today, I mean, the stuff he does. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in your life.
Yeah,
and
it's not just that. We've even filled the documents in to get him a knighthood by the king.
Yeah, I
can't believe he hasn't, considering
you know what? It took 40 years for the marathon people to recognise him because he started the marathon this year, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So, and of course, then you get when you meet people like Gordon, you see the person. You don't see disability. You don't see the chair. You see the person, and once you get that in your mind, everyone you meet is a person, you know.
Yeah,
And
sure.
that's the thing. And I always, you know, the one thing that I learned, because, you know, if you meet a parent with a kid in a wheelchair, they say to the parent, "Oh, what's his name or what's her name?" Well, why don't you ask the kid?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For sure.
And that sort of thing. So but the whole transition was really good. So realistically, I got quite involved in it. But also at that time, there was a massive family attitude to wheelchair basketball. You know, if you look at Hurricane Force, you know, you remember Sarah Grady?
Yeah.
Her mum used to do all the teas and coffees and cakes up there. Andy Weeks' mum and dad, John and Lynn, did all the tabling up there. I mean, go back to Tom Payne. His mum and dad used to do all the stuff,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, they learned. And then, you know, you had clubs, you went up north, and then who was the big guy at Manchester? Malcolm someone. Was it Malcolm
Jones.
Malcolm Jones, yeah. You know, he was there. There were characters, and, you know, the clubs were important. And then, you know, you had Vicky and Harry Brown's mum up at Sheffield.
Yeah.
And then
They're plastered all around. They're plastered all around. But you're talking about a family affair. You've got quite a bit of a family affair. Like, it wasn't just you into the refereeing. Your brother came into the coaching. Did you get him into it, or did he get himself into it, or?
Well, I tell you what happened. In '94, I got called because we did a lot of work with Aspire. They called me and said, "Look, Stoke Mandeville is going to be closed down. It's going bust. So, you know, would you do something to turn it around?" So I went, "Okay, fine." So I brought my team in, and we then. Do you remember that we had that fitness studio upstairs?
Yeah.
And then I helped design the equipment where you could move the chair and wheelchairs could go in, and, you know, you could have interactive training. And that was a time when the three-wheeled racing chair came in. So we put all the training material for there. We sorted the basketball out. We then sorted out the new track where Tony Gray and all these guys used to train. But also, it was really important because I knew what to do, but I needed someone who knew how to do it. And of course, Gordon was there.
Yeah.
And you know, so then we started we kept all the juniors going. We introduced the women's basketball. We then had a load of tournaments. And I remember one day I was sitting with Gordon and we were watching a game, and I said, "God, that's a cocky little shit over there." And Gordon meant he's going to be one of the best players in the world. And it was Terry Bywater, you know, and that was juniors. And then I remember we had one tournament where Matt Scott played, and, you know, and his arm went up for the ball and he kept going, and I kept going and kept going. I thought, how long's his bloody arms? You know, so we really got involved in that and helped that. So we turned Stoke Mandeville round. Then I thought, right, okay, I'll bring Hadj in. And then, you know, introduced him to the sport, and he was working at the centre, and obviously he got involved in the sport. And I remember his first basketball game, because when I was playing for Highbury Hawks, we used to play against Pentonville Prison. And, you know, you went right through the prison up to the top, and we were short, so I got him to come along. And we looked at all the people in there. We thought, well, he ain't going to score. So we just kept giving him the ball, and he took a shot and scored. You know what I mean? That was his introduction to basketball. And he just sort of, shit, you know, that sort of thing. But got him involved. And then, obviously, he got involved with the wheelchair there and Aces as well.
Yeah.
You know, the kid did good. But, you know, their situations, if you want to ask me about them, I'll tell you about them. But you know, sometimes, you know, no good deed goes unpunished. So, you know, you help people, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, where did that come from? That sort of thing. So, you know, and that's what it was. But I always remember actually that flight we were coming back from Rome. And no, we were coming back from somewhere, and we were on the plane, and I think it was Eddie. You know, Eddie had just great joke, and he just looked at a pair of us, and he goes, "Well, there's the Indian version of the Neville brothers." Do you know what I mean? You know, so that sort of thing. But that was always.
Well, while you're on about Stoke Mandeville, going back to them eras that you're talking about. How great were the memories you've got of the national games when it was the nationals there and everyone stayed down, the bowls bar was rammed, because they don't experience that these days.
Well, they can't, because what had happened was after 2 years, you know, we got it really going, and the general attitude to people is, if it's not working, get someone else to work it. And when they make it work and make it good, they think, oh shit, we're going to take the credit for this. So of course, then there was Kevin Baker and Eva Lafleur, who was Gutman's daughter, or I can't remember. They decided they wanted to take control. So what they did was they took control and then franchised it out to a company. And of course, they want to make money. They weren't interested in wheelchair sport. So all of a sudden, all the great things that were happening there. I mean, you know, after the games, we'd go in the bowls bar, you know, and everyone and loads of people there. Do you know what? What had happened was, what we did was we created a sense of belonging at Stoke Mandeville. And that was really important, because all the personalities went out the window. Yeah, I mean, there were people you liked, you didn't like, but personalities went out the window. And all of a sudden, the games were fantastic and the standard was unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, and that sort of thing. And we had a lot of good characters in the game as well. There were great characters. You know, there was a lot of education there as well. For me, you know, you talk about officiating, because I was refereeing quite a bit in America. So I made a point of going to. Do you remember the Spitfire tournament?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And then there was a Texas shootout or something?
Texas shootout. Yeah.
And then there was the one at Warm Springs as well. So I'd make sure I go there. And then what had happened was, you'd talk to people, you'd watch coaches, and then all of a sudden you'd sit and think, well, why is he such a great coach? And then all of a sudden you think, because he understands the game, or she understands the game, you know. And all of a sudden you start asking questions and thinking, well, why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? Then all of a sudden you realize, you know, that they were really good, because they'd take a very good sort of low point player to block out a high point player in back court, so you had a mismatch in the front court.
Yeah.
And but not only that, but their plays. Right now we've got too many coaches who are session coaches. Haven't got game coaches, and the game coaches were able to get the right combinations and space, and they would create massive amounts of space. And you think, where did that come from? You know, and that was really important. But also very important, you know, you talk about the nationals. There were a lot of people around at the time who were very good educationists, especially for someone like me. You know, you take, you know, Tony Willard, you take Russ Sims. Yeah. And one of the biggest things that I learned in sport, I remember refereeing up in Sheffield, and was it RGK's team? We were about 40 down. And I remember making a call with a few minutes to go. And Russ said, it was someone who'd got his wheels over the baseline when they were inbounding the ball. So I gave it to anyone had to come down. And Russ said to me, do you really need to make the call like that in a 40-point game? And I just went, shit, he's right. You know, and then you had JJ, and JJ was very clever. He'd make comments. Then I'd speak to him after and say, well, what was all that about? And he'd say, then you learned about players, you learned about chair control. And then, you know, Russ was a great one. And Colin, up at Sheffield, he was another great one. Mm-hmm. But, you know, Blakey was another one. You know, he everyone thought he moaned a lot, but he didn't. You know, if you listen to what he said, it was really important.
No, he just moaned a lot.
He just moaned a lot.
But, you know, you had Van der Linden, you know, those guys, and, you know, or the French guys. But for me, and this is really odd, for me, the master of education was Simon Munn. He'd say things, and you think, shit, why is he saying that?
He doesn't know. He didn't know why he was saying it. He was just saying it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you learned about players, you learned about what they could do, what they couldn't do, you learned about the game. And that was really important, because then you were a part of the game. And that we come back to what you're saying at Stoke Mandeville. You know, because you were part of the game, not one of these, I'm outside, I'm too good, you know, I'm a detective, I'm going to catch you out, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it became, and you know what? And I know people didn't like them, but remember, we had great characters. We had Eugene Dilks. You remember Eugene?
Yeah, of course.
You know, and then Tony Swindles. We had loads of guys who were really, you know, Gus
Taylor,
yeah. You know, there were some great people around.
But I think, Rob, at that time, you guys actually understood the game. So you didn't mind someone saying something to you, because I've said, I've said loads to you. We've had running battles, but I never knew, I never thought you would ever give me a technical, because you would just go, right, that's enough now, and we knew we both knew where you stand.
Yes.
Right, because nowadays I think they just give technicals out for fun, because I don't think they got control of the game.
Well, no. I see. We go back to it. They don't understand the game. They don't understand. Firstly, they don't understand the game. They don't understand people.
So the dynamics of the chair have actually progressed. Yeah, so the chairs are much more lighter. They can do a lot more things with it. But the rest of the game, like we've always said, the classification. We also think the refereeing, because we saw, was it the Worlds last year? They just handed out the Europeans. They were handing out unsportsmanlike for fun. There was more unsportsmanlike. It's like
7 a game.
7 a game.
You see, look, when Phil Craven was head of I.W.B.F. and Chip was around as well, we had Rob Seisman, who was the secretary. It was great. It was absolutely fantastic, because, and do you remember they used to have a magazine in Europe? Was it Net or something? I can't remember what it's called now. It was a European Eurozone, right? And every time you got it, they were having to go at the Eurozone people were having to go at I.W.B.F. Not because of anything that I.W.B.F. were doing. It's just that they kept everyone on a leash. They understood the game, and it was best. What they did, what was best for the game.
Yeah.
And then what had happened was Phil left, and Maureen Orchard came in, and that was a disaster. I mean, it was all of a sudden it went from leaders to rulers. Phil was a leader.
Yeah.
These people came, they were rulers. So as far as they were concerned, they were little. And then all of a sudden, the game wasn't important. What was more important is what they could get out of the game, what they could do. And, it was almost dictatorial. You must do this, you must do that. And
that's still going on now.
But it's the problem is, what's happened is, I mean, even in the UK, since then, it's not about sport. It's about writing bids. It's about getting money in, getting salaries in, making sure that they've got managers to manage managers.
Yeah.
It's just bullshit. It's absolute crap. It's when we did it, you could pick a phone up to me. You could pick a phone up to Steve Spilker, Trevor Wynyard. Do you remember Trevor Wynyard?
Yeah.
And John Mansell. You could pick the phone up to us and talk. You could phone Phil and speak to Phil.
Yeah.
But now you don't even know who these people are, where you can get hold of them, where you can call them. You can't even get an email from them, So, of course, they've become so detached from the sport.
Detached from the sport.
Detached from the sport. And, there's complete lack of transparency. There's complete lack of accountability.
So talk to me about, you're saying there's a complete lack of transparency. What do you mean?
Well, what had happened was, how can I put it? I was a thorn in people's side, always, because I would put them to task, and they didn't like it. But when you asked questions, they kept blocking you off. And I remember I was rushed in hospital. It was June 2010. I had major surgery. I had half my throat taken out, everything. And then what had happened was I came out. I seriously weighed about 7 stone. I lost 5 stone in weight, 5-6 stone in weight. Next thing, I get appointed to a tournament, a junior tournament in Italy. And I rang up. Hadj was the performance, had a performance at the time. And I rang him. I said, look, I can't go. I'm not well. I've just come out of hospital, that sort of thing. I left it at that. Next thing, I get a letter from I.W.B.F. Oh, you've been banned. I was like, what for? Because you refused to go and do a junior tournament. Well, no, that wasn't the case. I just couldn't go. I was physically unable to go. So what had happened was when I started asking questions, they just went, we don't want to answer it. So they wouldn't answer the phone. They wouldn't answer any letters, that sort of stuff. And it was basically, let's get rid of this guy because he's asking too many questions and he wants answers. So what had happened was they shut the door on the basis that they weren't accountable anymore.
So what sort of questions were you asking for them to do that? To get you banned, what sort of questions did you ask? Because, like, obviously, we've had the show. It's been going on, well, we're nearly a year now. And John's got banned for, it looks like similar.
I remember in 2003, and there were a load of people standing around, and then there was some of the girls came up. They were invited for the tour. I think they were going to pick for the GB for the two nonsense. So of course, when I was asking questions, I was saying, well, why is this happening? Why is that? Why are you not stopping this? You know, and so realistically, I became a thorn in their side.
So they covered it up. So they covered it up.
Oh, they covered it up, big and well and truly. I mean, at that time, because I was very close with Gordon, and Gordon was asking questions of Joe. So of course, then they get rid of Gordon as well, Gordon as well. You know, on some bullshit excuse, but it was almost like a dictatorial attitude. You know, we don't like what he's doing. Let's get rid of him, and let's put him in a position where no one talks to them, so they don't get any information, and he can't come at us. And I find, you know, there's I'll go back to what I said. You know, no good deed goes unpunished. You know, I brought in a lot of referees and trained them really well, and you know what, they're spineless gits. I remember that time I was going to put what's his name, Mig, forward as a technical commissioner, and then I got a call saying, well, you can't because he's been investigated for making racist remarks. So I then spoke to him, and he told me exactly what had happened. I went, okay, so I pushed him forward. Now, you know, we've got a position where an official was banned for 2 years for abusing a kid. You know, they said banned, but when you ask them what it's for, they won't tell you. So it's all garbage, because what they're doing is they're getting exchequer funding, and they're saying, "Oh, we're not going to tell you." Well, of course, if you're getting funding from Sport England or whatever, you're bound by the Freedom of Information Act. So of course, I've got a bee in my bonnet now. I'm like, okay, right, you did all this, you got away with it, not anymore. Because
so they're just kind of pushing all it under the carpet. So anytime anybody wants to question them about something, any particular thing, you know, because that's kind of serious if they've, you know, someone's been accused of that.
Well, the thing is, what they do is they have a cupboard which they put all the stuff in and lock it up, which are too difficult to deal with, you know, unless hopefully it will all go away, you know, they all turn into a skeleton. I see there's a lot of work going on at the moment, you know, outside of basketball. And you've got to understand that wheelchair basketball survives because of passion, emotion, and involvement of people.
Yeah.
Okay. Not because of it's in spite of what the governing body is doing, or what any sports governing body. You look at cricket, you look at athletics, you look at swimming and all the gymnastics, all the stuff that's gone on there. It's historical, and all of a sudden it's come out, because you can't hide that sort of stuff. It comes out at the end. And what we've had is we've had career CEO. Anyone who comes in basically has got the same DNA.
Yeah.
So anyone who understands wheelchair basketball hasn't got a say in it. And the moment you ask about it, you can't have it, because they've got their little golden nest. You know, okay, we'll earn money out of this, and then we've got a CV. We'll move on to the next one. You know,
that's our point. That's exactly our point, and it's saying.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question, Bob.
We're just a stopgap for them till they get a bigger, better thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So let me ask you this question, Bob. So you became the head of the refereeing association. Do you think they like that? Like I'm saying that I think there was racism in the association. There always has been, and I don't think it stopped now. It's just kind of pushed to the circle. But then you rose to the top of the head of the referees.
Yeah, I think what had happened was it was basically that transition, that perfect storm where Phil went, Maureen came in, Charlie was there, a load of people from Eurozone were there, and they had this. How can I put it? You know, look, and I'll be quite frank, all right. When you play sport, you're on one side of the bridge, okay. And everyone's the other side of the bridge, and they think, well, he's not too bad. Let's bring him across. And they bring you halfway across the bridge, and you stop there, and they go, right, well, because you're ethnic minority, you're this. All right, we'll give you a nickname. But it's not a nickname you choose. It's what they want to call you, okay? When you come right across the bridge, and you're in the club, and they say, right, these are the rules of the club. This is what you're bound by. Don't get any better than us. Don't do this, okay? You're fine, okay? Then all of a sudden you get better than them, and you become really good. They think, well, we're not going to allow this. So then they scrap you. They basically go after you because they won't allow it. I mean, I have been the only Asian referee in this country to have refereed at top level. I mean, I'm talking about basketball. We've never had, Uriah Rennie was the only black referee who refereed at football. There's been no one since.
So,
and there won't be anyone.
So you think they came after you?
Well, look, I'd like to think not, okay? But let's be brutally honest, okay? I was an Asian guy. I was the only Asian at that time in I.W.B.F. I was a senior referee, right? You had people who came and said, we can't be having this. We can't have this Asian boy basically being better than everyone else. And then obviously, then I was asking questions. I was asking very serious questions of people. You know, why is this happening? Why is this happening? You know, and they didn't like it. But that goes back to the individual. And I go back to the integrity of people like, you know, Gordon, Tom Payne. Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the guys with total amazing amount of integrity was Nigel Smith. Yeah. You know, what a great guy. You know, and Doc was always there. She was always tabling, always made the teas and coffees. But these guys, they're few and far between. Don't get me wrong. You know, Amir's doing this stuff at Egham. He's got a lot of. I mean, there was a kid there called Langdon. He's 15 years old. Saying he is something special, absolutely special. But what's going to happen? Nothing. When I was refereeing, I'd go around the country. And I'd come back and say, hey, I remember going up north and I saw this kid, Billy Bridge. And I came back and said, hey, you've got to watch this kid. All right. I remember going up to Norwich, seeing Lee Manning. And then there was another, I think it was Newark. I went and saw one of the first games she played, Amy Conroy. Not Amy Conroy, Amy. Is it Amy?
Yeah, it's Amy Conroy. Yeah, she was over that way, Newark.
Yeah,
I think she started over there.
Yeah. So basically, she was really worried. She didn't want to get involved in that. And I spoke to her. I said, look, you know, you've got everything to be a great player. Because I think very sadly, she had some tragedy in her family at the time and she needed someone to talk to her. And I remember Ian Laker. I remember refereeing a game and Gaz Chowdhury was playing. He was 13, 14 at the time. And after the game, well, I think I threw the game. I stopped the game. I told Ian, come over. And I said to Gaz, look, you're a great player, but you're an arsehole. Change your attitude and you will be one of the top players in the world. You know, I remember sitting with Jim Palmer when he first started playing, didn't want to play. And I sat with him and said, look, you're a 1 point player. You're valuable. So the involvement was great. But you know what? The biggest problem, you talk about racism. If you call me something, I'd accept it because you've gone face to face with me. You've told me and I can deal with that. The problem with racism is not the issue between you and me or whoever else. It's the fact that the governing bodies basically pretend that they look after you. They don't.
Yeah,
they don't.
I think they pretend it don't exist.
Yeah. They don't want to admit it exists. There's a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't want to admit it. You know, and that, I mean, do you remember, and all right, please correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Do you remember when Addy wasn't going to get picked for either Sydney or Athens? I can't remember what it was. And he wasn't going to get picked. And the only reason he got picked was, I think Addy's two and a half points. And they had to pick him to make up the point system. Otherwise, it wouldn't have worked. And I remember sitting thinking, are they, because, you know, Eddie's a great character. He's loud, you know, and he's exciting, and his emotions and everything get involved in the game. And I remember thinking, they're not picking him because they don't like him, you know, and that sort of stuff.
But I think at that time, Bob, it was a transition. So Addy was part of our group, me, John, Addy, where no matter what we did, and they'll all tell you the same. No matter what we did, how well we played, we were never going to get picked. It just was going to be like that. It just it changed professionally. Professionalism changed. That changed the whole perspective of it. Tipness came in, changed it professionally. Nige came in and changed it, and Nige wanted a new breed of players, a new young breed of players. So Addy was part of that new breed of players. As we got
I think to 2004, the problem with Addy was
his work commitment.
Yeah. But then you see, you have to accept it. You know, it's not. You can't then be prejudicial towards him. You have to accept. And you know what?
I think,
and that was a big problem.
I think, Rob, the problem was it got so the money had got so much, the professionalism has got so much. So for us, so we got in, and we got the bronze medal in Sydney. We goes to Japan in 2002, not knowing what was going on. When we get to the tournament,
we was actually told at the tournament,
you don't get to the final, all the money's gone. Now,
Yeah,
never
they
told
lose
us
the lottery.
that. Never told us any of that before we went. Before we were training. You imagine we're going into a tournament, probably the biggest world championships, and probably I would say the best world championships there's ever been.
Well, I was there refereeing. I remember.
Yeah, the best that's ever been. There wasn't a better world championship. To be told, if you don't get to the final, all the funding will be gone.
But they created that. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They created that. I mean, you go back to where we were voluntary. I mean, look at John Stainton. I mean, he won the silver at Atlanta. And it was at that point we were about the sport. I had a lot of respect for John. It was all about sport, and we go back to the clubs. It was all about sport.
But
and then all of this stuff.
That silver medal, Bob, is what got the lottery funding. Everything that we done before that, where we done it for the love of the sport, got us to where we are now. But these people now, this is what we're trying to say to these people now. These people now don't understand that. They don't understand where the association was.
What is it you think has created the gap between the members and them?
Well, it was basically, we go back to that time where Phil left. Phil moved on because he became head of IPC, didn't he, if I remember right? And then obviously, the people who came in, it was more about them than the sport. And it was like, let's fill these forms in, let's get as much money as possible. The money was coming in, but it wasn't used for what it was supposed to be used for. It was, at one time, wheelchair basketball, where there was Steve Spilker was secretary, Trevor Wynyard, myself, John was coach, Phil was around, 5 volunteers. That was it. And all of a sudden now, you look at it, you've got a board of directors as long as your arm, you've got a CEO, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this, you've got a head of this, and he manages him, who manages him. And it just became, it's become not about sport, it's become about that whole shut office door, we'll discuss everything behind, you just sit outside, and we'll tell you what to do. It's got to have a radical change. Absolutely radical change.
Because at the moment, Bob, they don't have AGMs. As you know, in the old days when you were around with Phil and that, people had a say. Now they're blocking everybody's say. They had a they're blocking.
But this is what I'm saying. At the moment that transition happened, Phil went, Maureen came in, Charlie came in. They changed it, and they went from literally, this leadership of sport to ruling the sport. And when you rule something, you don't care about the young people. You don't care about them or the people coming through. The only reason that successes happen, I mean, you look at Jack Davey and the fellow at Bath, Alex, and what's his name?
Davey.
Is it, sorry?
Jack Davey.
Jack Davey, yeah. They're running a program because it's their passion. And what they're doing is producing some great players. Pete Ball is another one. Look, I don't know anyone north of Watford, so I can only speak about people further south, and I'm not saying it's not going up. I mean, you think about it. Sue Conroy, I mean, she ran Vikings for years.
But it crashed because they couldn't get funding, because our national governing body seemed to be stealing everybody's funding and keeping it for themselves.
But then, you see, that happened right at the start. Because what people were really clever were, we'll take the money, we'll send loads of names and numbers to the government, and they'll give us loads of money because the participation's so big. So they worked on participation, and very much in the sense of a lot of the funding for basketball itself is it's this. Oh look, we have a lot of poor kids playing, and they've made themselves almost these sort of crusaders for changing society.
So the Pied Piper, they're like the Pied Piper.
Exactly. And that's what's happening with wheelchair basketball. I mean, I'll go back to Charlie. The moment that happened, everyone who was basically a new CEO or executive or whatever. It was about them, not about the sport. He said, you know what, Saint, can you pick up the phone and speak to anyone at head office? You can't.
We definitely can. We definitely can't.
Yeah.
No.
You know, and that sort of thing. And they've distanced themselves. So the whole concept of the sport from that perfect storm time is gone. So
But do you not think this gap, and the reason they won't answer the phone and the reason there is no more AGMs is because them who are in charge that are getting the financial benefits of these big salaries, the CEOs and performance directors, with no background in our sport, with no background regarding disability, do you not think it's because they don't have an answer for the questions we, the disabled sports people, can ask?
I don't think it's a question of don't have an answer. I think it's a question of they don't know what the question is. They don't know. You know, I went back to, you know, when I was refereeing, I'd ask a question about a call I'd made, then I'd ask it, and then I'd question the answer. But now you've got this situation where they're, how can ivory towers? They're in this ivory tower, and it's almost like, I'm sorry to say this, but it's almost like politics. You know, they come up with so much bullshit. You know, and you're thinking, well, that's not correct. And it's all about protecting positions, protecting their income, protecting their CV for the next job. So while that's happening, you're not going to get it because you've got rulers rather than leaders. There's no leadership in sport anymore. Yeah. None at all.
That's a great way to put it. That's an absolutely great way to put it.
And until you get leadership, and the only way you're going to get leadership is people who understand what's happening, you know, at base level and that sort of stuff. You can, you know, we can have the sport at top level, but we don't, because most of our guys are going abroad to play.
Yeah.
Well, that's how can that be? It's not possible. Then at junior level, I mean, okay, but the juniors are coming through because people like Jack and Pete Bull and these guys are doing the work to invite them in.
So the juniors are coming through despite of the ivory towers. That's what, you know, them in the ivory towers.
Well, you've also got to look at it because the parents, they go to clubs and all of a sudden their player becomes a person, whereas in society they're not.
Yeah.
And what's happening is the governing body are now looking at it. They're not looking at them as people that with a sense of belonging. Because realistically, with where you are, you don't belong to the association. You're just a piece on the side.
Yeah.
And at one time, you go back to the nationals and the competitions that we all had, you know, the playoffs and stuff. It was a sense of belonging. Yeah, obviously it was. It was a great sense of, and you had a laugh and a joke, and you went away, you learnt about people. And, you know, you ask questions, you and I would sit down, we'd have a chat, and you think, oh, he's not a bad guy, you know. Or you think, oh, you don't like him, he's an arsehole, you know, that sort of thing. But we got to know each other. But the important thing is, what we did was, we took away the illusion that we had of someone, and we looked at reality of this person is a really nice guy. You know, we get him off the floor, we talk. But what you have to understand is, on the floor, it's passion and emotion. Whereas the governing body don't understand that passion and emotion. What they understand is forms to fill in and money to get to pay their wages. And if they had, you know, I go back to Phil again and Tip and all these guys, they were involved. They understood the game. They had the emotion. They had the understanding. You know, they had the passion, and the passion's gone.
But at the same time, at the situation right now, for example, them at the association, the board, they have a rule in place where they can terminate your membership without reason. Yet they're selling all this constant, please sign up and do the safeguarding course. Is that not safeguarding? Having a dictatorship that can ban you or terminate membership?
But this is where I came to. There's no transparency. And it's very dictatorial. I mean, this happened to me in 2010. I was asking questions and they didn't like it because I was putting them to task. Because what they were doing was disgraceful. For me, I was fighting for the sport. I wasn't fighting for me. I was fighting for the sport. And you just think, you've got to stop somewhere because this is going to hurt the sport.
That's what we're doing, fighting for the sport. All the stuff that they've said regarding us being derogatory, or no, not derogatory. What's the word?
Insulting.
No,
Misogyny.
Yeah.
Something like
When
that.
we're
Anyway.
saying misogynistic comments, because we're saying it costs £212,000 a year to have the WPL Women's Premier League.
Right.
With only 4 teams in, and one team sometimes only fields 6 players. We're just saying it's a waste of money. We're not saying women's basketball is poor or bad. We're just saying for £212,000, you've already got a national league. So how does that become misogynistic?
Well,
But then you get banned for it at the same time.
But then you see what's happening is it's all political correctness. You know, look at us. You know, we've got this. You know, we're filling in this gap. Well, you're not, because you're hurting the sport. Because at the end of the day, you put all this money in at the expense of everything else. Look, I don't have an issue. I go right back. Who was that lady who was involved with wheelchair basketball, and she did a lot of stuff for women's? Because I remember the first time Claire Strange came to play, and you know, she did. Forgive me for saying this, but I think she had a horse riding accident, and she came to play. And there was a lady who was involved quite heavily. Really nice lady who looked after the women's team. She was a women's team manager.
Sue. I think her name's Sue, but I can't remember the last name.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
She's from up north.
You know.
Oh, I can't remember her
That's
name.
right.
Yes,
Sorry?
Sue Pawson. That's it.
That's it. Yeah. You know, and there was that care. There was the whole attitude of looking after people. What we've got now is this complete divorce of caring for players, caring for what you are. You know, it's a massive sport. It's a really important sport. You know, and what you've got to understand is, from that critical moment, that perfect storm, wheelchair basketball was the blue ribbon event at the Paralympics. It's now wheelchair rugby. You know, it's gone that way because they don't really care.
Yeah,
we believe, Bob. They don't know what they're doing. If the money ran out tomorrow, they'd be gone like a shot. They'd leave it all together. What they don't like is being questioned. This is what this show's been all about. They hate being questioned, and they've tried lots of underhanded things to get us taken down.
But this was happening in 2010 when they got rid of me, because you know, I hadn't done anything wrong. I mean, since then, officiating in this country has gone down the toilet, completely down the toilet, because they haven't got any leadership. You know, if someone called me and I ring a referee up on Monday, you know, shit was going to hit the fan.
Okay, this is another public service announcement brought to you in part.
So who have you got beef with? Have you got beef with the association here or I.W.B.F. as well?
Well, what had happened was the whole thing started with Maureen Orchard coming in. Then I.W.B.F. changed. And of course, then Charlie followed her, thinking, well, let's get rid of him. So basically, I was hurting everyone by asking questions, you know. So,
A bit like
look,
us.
but
So
the problem, we're outliers. That's the problem. We're outliers because we're saying look, I go back to early 70s with Tom Paine. I've been in the game a hell of a long time, and I understand the game. And I quite happily go and, help people. You basically, we help build Aspire. Now we can't go in unless we've got membership, and membership's, let me put it this way. We talk about the marathon with what Gordon did.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is quite a bold statement. If I hadn't done what I did with Stoke Mandeville, Paralympics wouldn't be what it is today in England. Because that small movement to get it going again, because if Stoke Mandeville had closed down, we wouldn't have Paralympics. We wouldn't have that. So, they're celebrating all the people there. They've forgotten these like Gordon and myself, and you know what we did. But don't get me wrong, Gordon with all his development for juniors and women's game and all that, he was a major player in what happened.
Yeah.
And that's what we're saying with Gordon is we can't understand how he's not been knighted, MBE and all of that, but yet they've given out to others who have not even done nowhere near what he's done in the sport. Nowhere near.
Listen,
not even a fraction of what he's done in the sport.
Saint, I've raised 11 million quid for charity. Right, my first mountain climb was 2012. I mean, I was climbing before then. Right, I was born in Kenya, foot of Mount Kenya. You know, I was a free kid. You know, we were out. You know, as a kid, I was out catching snakes, poisonous snakes. You know, it was a game. We were running around throwing stones at crocodiles in rivers and stuff. You know, it was a game. It was that sort of stuff. So when you've got someone like me who's a free spirit, who basically understands society, you know, I've climbed loads of mountains. I've skied 3 months across the Arctic to the North Pole, Everest, and all that sort of stuff. I do it for the right reason. Right now, I'm going to be leading a Everest base camp trek for an organisation that feeds. It's a humanitarian organisation. It's called Nishcam SWAT. They feed homeless people, that sort of stuff, or whatever. Last year, I got the blind guy to the summit, Omar Latif, who was on TV. Harry Brown, who plays football for, he's got cerebral palsy, who plays for England, and that sort of stuff. But you do it, you move on. You do it, you move on. So when I look at, you know, hairdressers, you know, sort of getting MBEs,
Not much of that here.
you know, that sort of stuff, and you think, shit, you know what, we're doing all this stuff. Look, we don't do it
To be recognised.
but you occasionally want to pat on the back and say, listen, we know what you're doing, good luck, you know, well done. But for me, I mean, I've known Gordon 40 years, and how he's not been knighted or got an MB or OB or whatever, it just scares the shit out of me, because I just think,
We've nominated him, we've put him in.
Yeah,
We've nominated, we've filled the forms in, we got all the signatures in the right place.
Yeah.
We're just hoping that
It's just a waiting game now. It's just a waiting game.
yeah, I know, but we shouldn't have to wait.
Yeah,
No,
for sure.
You
For
know.
sure. So,
I mean, go ahead.
you talked about lots of things, but one, because they're all depressing things, the association, all of those people.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me your best game that you refereed in, or the best game. What was your most proudest game? Obviously, I know you've refereed a Paralympic final, but your most proudest game.
I would say, because of my respect for Sandy Blythe, I'd say the final at Kitakyushu, the World Championship. You know, that Australia won it, didn't they?
No. USA beat us.
But hang on.
So it probably been
The bronze medal game
Bronze
was
medal game,
in that
Canada,
one.
Australia.
Yeah, that. You know, it's very difficult to say what the best game is, because I think the most important game is the next one you do. But also, you've got to leave a mark on a game, and I mean in a good sense, because you know players then respect you, and also you've got to be able to read the game. You know, there are games where you know a bench player comes on and most people wouldn't call a foul because they're going to shoot, but you put them on the line, they score a basket, and it's made their day.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. I mean, you know, I refereed at the European Championships in Hamburg. Do you remember? It was Hamburg at one time. I was the only one who did the both men's and women's finals. Sydney, there was Athens. But I think, I don't know. You know, for me, I would go back rather than the game, the people. I think, you know, when you were playing for MK, there were great games there, you know, Sheffield, Oldham, Sheffield, MK, you know, Hurricanes, that sort of stuff. And even going down to Bounds Green to referee the kids with Tom Payne, that were really important. But I'm not sure I would say it was you know, one sticks out. I think a lot of things stick out from each game. You know, we talk about going to Rome. That was really important. That was good because you met people. I don't know. I wouldn't like to pick one game. in entirety, because there were loads of great games. You know, there was stuff in Holland. Was it the World Championships in Holland?
2006, yeah.
I mean, there were great games there. I'm sad because a lot of these tournaments you went to, you know, the referees you knew were going to get the finals like flies around shit, you know, with the top guy, you know, the top woman, because you knew they won. You just went on and did their games. They were very much, I want to get a final, I want to get this and this. And that was quite sad. That was quite sad. But I just think, for me, I would say I really enjoyed a lot of the junior tournaments at Stoke Mandeville, because that was great, because you saw people coming through, a lot of the nationals. But forget internationals. I think really important games were the games that happened here. And, you know, you'd go off. I remember going to Scotland quite a bit, and Steve Duff was there. Was it Steve Duff?
Stevie
Sadly
Duff,
passed
yeah,
away.
yeah.
Yeah. No, what a great guy, you know. But I think a lot of my stuff was very much seeing new kids, new talent, and looking at potential and coming back and saying, look, this kid or this girl needs to be looked at. I think that's really important.
So
You know.
we're right now. We say it's broken. How does it get fixed?
Well, you know, a few weeks back, Ian Purslough came to me. I remember when I got ditched, no one picked the phone up to me. He came up to me, absolved his guilt, and I told him what he could go and do with himself. Because the problem is that we've got this situation where we've got too many corrupt people or incompetent people in charge.
Yeah.
Too many. And I think, you know, at some point, someone's going to have to say, either government position or someone in sports going to say, we've got to sit down and talk to people and see how we can move this forward. Because realistically, don't get me wrong, it's one of the best sports in the world. No two ways about it.
Do you not think that cupboard you're on about, what's shut with the skeletons in, do you not think it's a case of opening that and getting it all out?
You've got to. You've got to. And that's the thing. And that cupboard is full. Cupboard is completely full now.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of shit in there. Hell of a lot. You know, right from what happened to me, you know, what's happened to you, you know, a lot of the stuff that's gone on. And it's going to come to a point where when that cupboard opens up, it's going to go back to the racism in cricket, the abuse in athletics and gymnastics. It's all going to come out. Look, everything needs an overhaul. We go through circles. We've had sort of almost 14 years plus of this circle of, you know, it's we're rulers, we'll do what we want. Yeah, forget the players. They'll do enough to get us the funding to pay our wages. That needs to change. I think we go back to accountability, responsibility, and transparency, and they don't exist.
Well, we are coming up to it'll be 28 years since Phil Craven had the meeting with IWBF when he wanted it athlete driven.
Yeah,
he wanted the suits out. He wanted it athlete driven.
But that's the problem. And as soon as Maureen Orchard came in, the suits were in.
But
you know,
which we're getting close to.
But our problem, Bobby, is there's just me and him. We're talking out about it. Everybody else, if they're anything to do with the association, if they're playing, if they're members, they want to do everything behind closed doors because they're afraid of being banned. How can that be our sport?
Well, it can't be. Look, I mean, look, Stoke Mandeville wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me. It'd be a housing estate, right? And no one's going to put their hands up and say, yeah, that was the case. No one. No one's going to put their hands up and say, you know, what Gordon did is why we've got wheelchair marathons right now. They're not understanding that people who did small things with the butterfly effect was unbelievable. Okay, we go back to this whole autocratic dictatorial attitude of very much you will do as we say.
Yeah,
you may not like it, but you're like, you know, you're ploughing the fields, and they're just taking all the grain, and they're saying, well, you can't have anything, but here's a pat on the back and a couple of handful of rice for all that you do. But you've also got to remember is that there are very few people like yourselves and me who will go, this is wrong. This is wrong. A lot of people are too scared, and they'll turn away and think, you know what, I'd sooner be part of this with the problems rather than try and change it. And that's the major issue. Because I was, and I'll say it now, I was a thorn in their side, and they wanted me out.
Well, that's
And
what we are now.
yeah. So what does it say about them, not about us?
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
But if you think about it, Bob, is you were the thorn in their side, but it just continues. It's been continuing.
But it was that. It was. I keep talking about it. I go back to that time where Phil went off. People came in, and the whole DNA. It was contaminated, because what they wanted isn't what the sport needed.
Yeah.
And that was a difference.
But there's still, like more.
You've got to have a strong character who is a leader. That's the problem. We don't have leaders. We have a lot of rulers. We have rule followers. We need a leader that comes in and says, right, what's this sport about? Let's get a definition. What do we need to do to make this sport what it could be? You see, we brought a lot of coaches in, right, who were able-bodied coaches, AB coaches. They tried to basically bring their system into wheelchair. It doesn't work. They're two different games. It doesn't work. It's like playing basketball using, or playing rugby using basketball rules, or playing basketball using rugby rules. It doesn't work. You've got to say this sport in itself is unique. It's very unique, and we've got to basically say what is the IP of this sport? Right, this is what it is. Right, let's make it great again.
Yeah.
Let's make it fair, transparent, respectable, and a sense of belonging. And right now, you'd go to any club, they'll come to you and say, oh, you're doing a great job, saying, Johnny, you're doing a great job. Oh, they're doing this, they're doing, but they don't do anything about it.
No.
Because they want to play, they want to go home. But we're the people who can see through the bullshit. And we look behind the curtain and say, this ain't right. Can't do anything to me. I'm
you
not
drink in a pub near your house, they'll find that pub and they'll ring up, and that's what we
get you barred.
That'd be very difficult because I'm a teetotal.
Hey,
they'll phone up someone on Everest and say, don't allow him on there. You know what I mean?
You'll hear it on the tannoy when you go in Asda next week. Could you please remove yourself from the shop? You have been banned by the association.
But you know what? This is more about them than me.
Yeah, I think both of us, all three of us have paid that price, because I think we missed out on, and I think especially probably all three of us missed out on teaching the kids the game the right way. But we're classed as dinosaurs. We're classed as don't listen to what they say. They don't know what they're saying. But yeah, everything.
I wouldn't say it was that. I'd say we're blackballed.
Yeah.
We're pure and simple blackballed.
But
there's something regarding our blackballed us.
But it's not about you, though, is it? It's not about you. It's about people in charge.
Yeah, it's not. It's nothing to do.
But they're weak people. They're very weak people.
Yeah,
it's nothing to do with us. I mean, we want to make the sport better. We want to make the kids better. We want to be, make that pathway where the kids that you might walk around and see, and they've got a pathway to go. We're not interested in money or anything like that. We do the show. This show's all funded by us. Yes, we have a sponsor, but we decided we'd had enough. We've had enough of the bullshit, the lies.
Yeah. And the biggest thing for us was, once we started this and we started getting the emails from different people coming in saying, can you ask this or can you talk about this on your show to get that point out?
Yeah.
The first thing people would say was, if I tell you this, can you keep me anonymous? Yeah. And we never understood why until I got banned, and then we realised why.
Yeah.
But they live in fear. They live in fear.
Of course they do. You know what? And that's a major issue. That's a major issue. You know what? When you get renegades, or like you, I'm a renegade anyway. You got to ask yourself a question: what did we do wrong for these people to act this way? What did we do wrong for these people to question us? You know what? And like I say, I go back to my refereeing days. You know, if I made a call and someone had to go at me, I'd say to them, okay, what did I do wrong? And you'd say, well, this, and this. And I go, no, I don't agree with you because this is what happened. So the perception, you know, there's a whole difference between what is perceived and what is the perspective. So the perception a lot of people have, you know, the perception that the governing body has of you is not correct, because the perspective is that you are trying to get the sport to where it needs to be, where it wants to be, not their perception or where it should be. That's a big difference, you know. And
well, we did have a meeting with them. Me and Cindy organised a meeting with them last year.
Yeah.
And the CEO at the end of the meeting shook my hand and said, nice to meet you. Your reputation precedes you.
Yeah. But isn't that condescending?
What is it? Condescending? Is it derogatory? What is it?
Well, do you know what? It's the biggest problem is it's disingenuous.
She'd never met me before, but she said it.
It's disingenuous because.
But where does she get my reputation from if she's never met me? I've been out the sport for 10 years.
Yeah.
And she can lay a comment down on the table right in front of me like that.
Yeah, but it's the perception of other people that have had of you.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that's the problem. It's not. It's like, you know, I meet someone, and we have we make up our minds very quickly, okay? But we've got to stop and think, okay, what is this person about? I think, you know, with me, with being on mountains and being on expeditions and being on my own and very dangerous situations, you know, I almost killed myself twice, 3 times, you know. I spent a month with a tribe in Papua, you know, that sort of stuff, living with them. The thing that happens is you look at things realistically, and what you've got to also remember is when you're on the mountains, the world as you know it ceases to exist. And what happens then is that the senses that you didn't know you had come through, and you see things in a different light, completely different light. But what happens is the ego goes, because ego and humility are inversely proportional, because if your ego's here, your humility is down there. But if your humility is up here, your ego's down there, and you become more and more humble. Yeah. And therefore you listen to people, and rather than judge all the time, you know, because people are judging you thinking, oh, they want to have a go at us because they want our jobs. Well, you don't want your jobs.
Yeah.
You want the sport to improve. You want the great things in sport. Look, we go back many, many years. You know, we've, like you say, we've crossed swords, but we still talk to each other. We still respect each other. We may not agree with a lot of things.
Yeah.
But, you know, what we did was that, you know, you wanted the right thing for the sport. I wanted the right thing for the sport. And at the end of the day, we got somewhere along to where it should be. That was, you know, there was never us and them. It was always that interaction. And until you get that interaction, it's not going to happen. Certainly not going to happen. And
well, I don't see how not having an AGM, they can have that interaction. Even though it says, it does say on the membership thing, what they advertise right at the bottom for £30 a year. This gives you a right to vote at the AGM.
Yeah, but the thing is,
in brackets, what we don't.
Why have an AGM when you've got to answer questions?
Exactly.
And that was the problem with me. I go right back. You know, I mean, you know, to tell complete lies about what happened to me. You know, I came out of hospital. I couldn't go to Italy to do a junior game. Then all of a sudden, you know, great opportunity to get rid of him, to tell lies about him. So that's exactly what's happening to you.
So is that ban of yours still live now?
Don't know. Don't care. Don't know. Don't care. I just...
Have you no desire to get back into the sport?
Yeah, but you know what? Why do I want to bang my head against the wall? Because I'm dealing with incompetent people. The referee's a pile of shit. Okay. Yeah. And I'll say that openly because I know who's involved, who's not involved. You know, and you know, when you can't speak to, look, when I was involved in officiating, we could pick the phone up. I could speak to, you know, every time there's a rule change. I don't know if you remember, I'd send a list out what the rule changes were, how they were. You know, I could speak to Steve, I could speak to Trevor. I could speak to a load of people, and you'd have a debate, and I call Phil up and say, Phil, where are we going with this? Because this is wrong, this is right. And then when we had the tilting came in, I wrote all the rules on cylinders and that sort of stuff. And we had a lot of stuff that we did, but that was for the benefit of the sport. It was mutual respect, because I respected what they were doing. When Frogley came across and tilting and everything, it was a great move in sport, because a lot of people say, oh, well, we shouldn't allow this. Well, that was the movement in sport. That was the movement in ability. That was a movement in breaking barriers. Problem is, we're not breaking barriers anymore. We're creating them more and more. And why you, as two individuals, are respected GB players and respected in the game, not only in England but worldwide, why are you not being listened to?
Well, there was one thing I wanted to ask.
Yeah, sure.
One referee reached out to us a few weeks back saying he's not refereeing this year because he's been classed ineligible, because he wouldn't do the coach clean UKAD course, the drug testing course. He doesn't believe it's not an IWBF requirement.
Okay, well, firstly, the humorous side, okay?
Yeah.
If you can find a drug that makes referees ref better, give them the drug.
Well, that's what we thought. Does it make them blow the whistle better or what?
Yeah, I know. But I go back, because I spoke to Andy Weeks' mum and dad, John and Lynn. Great table official. They did it for years and years, but because they hadn't gone on a course, they weren't allowed to do the stuff anymore.
It's unbelievable.
That is unbelievable.
Those guys, because I remember when they first came through the door, because I was at the team with them, with Andrew, they would give everything to the club. They went on the course to become table officials. They done teas, coffees, drove us to matches, everything. And it's done. It's just...
But then, who's making these rules up? Who's making these rules? Because you know what? I go back to the sense of belonging, a sense of engagement. You want people to come in. You know what? What they're doing is they want standards up there, but their ability to govern is down here.
Yeah.
And it's absolute bullshit.
Well, we know from playing at international level, we was dope tested playing for GB. We was dope tested at GB camps. I was dope tested playing in the Spanish and the Italian league.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I've never experienced drug testing in this country. I didn't experience it in the third division, the second, or the first, and I've never seen a table official or a referee in the drug testing centre.
But then you see, isn't that a distraction? Because if they, like your question is about this referee who wants, doesn't want to be drug tested, and I understand that. But
no, he doesn't mind doing it. He said, but being drug tested, he said, I just don't want to do the course. If it's not an IWBF requirement, why should I do it?
Yeah, but then you see, what I'm saying is it's a distraction. So if we make it that you have to do this, okay, we don't have to worry about the competence and the ability and stuff. What they're doing is distracting away from what officiating should be to another. Is that so now it's not about, do we know the rules? Can we referee the game? Can we do this? It's all about drugs. It's that little nudge in the direction where you're taking away from focus on you.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I go back to it, if it improves them, give them more of the stuff. Do you know what I mean?
So is John and Lynn Weeks not table official then anymore because of that course?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. But they helped out Amir at he's the thing he runs. It's how can I put it? It's basically creating an elitist attitude, and almost, it not being, how can I put it? I was going to say charitable, but it's not a question of charitable. It's basically being able to accommodate people.
But I think, Bob, what you're trying to say is those are the heartbeats of teams. Those are the heartbeats of the game. Yeah. Without those people, one, their kids wouldn't have played because they didn't come to do all of that table officialing and all of that stuff. I remember John,
Yeah.
and they never came to that. They came so their son, who was very shy, didn't have nothing to, didn't know what to do, came into basketball. They thought, well, you know what, I could help. Now, the way it looks like now is bollocks to those people. We don't care.
Yeah. I mean, do you remember when, was it Brian Henderson used to run the team in Northampton? Was it Brian Henderson?
Was it Bill?
Brian.
No,
No, I
Brian
think it was
Henderson.
Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he used to go there and really enjoy it because his mum used to make cakes and she used to serve up tea and coffee. And, they, you know, it was a real friendly club atmosphere because everyone got involved. See, I keep coming back to Tom Payne, right? What we learned was that when you were in a club, you did everything. You were part of everything.
Yeah.
You know? And once you take that away, the whole soul of the club disappears, the spirit. You just become something that goes through emotions. And I just think that somewhere along the line, we've got to stop and say, okay, these guys are competent. They're very good. They can do the job. Why do they need a certificate to be able to say, oh, I can do the job? It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's absolute nonsense.
Well,
and these rules are coming from people who crap themselves.
Yeah, so they're coming from the people who are funding them. If you understand what I mean, we need so many table officials that are fully qualified. We don't want to see any of these ones that are not got everything that we need. You know, like the clean sport, all of these. So that's what they've taken on. Because I think our association now is just a numbers game. It's nothing to do with sport. It's a numbers game to get as much money in as possible.
Let me put it this way: if I hadn't been as adaptable as I was, half the people who are involved with table officiating and refereeing wouldn't be there. Pursglove, Chris Gregory, all these guys, they failed their exams first time round, and they had to wait another 2 years before they would go through. But I pushed them the next year, right? Jan Timms, I was the one who brought her into the game and helped her along. Now she's a technical commissioner. All the pictures on Facebook, oh, I'm here. You know, but if it wasn't for me who had brought them in and helped them develop, I mean, like Mick is still a commissioner. But if I hadn't overlooked his misdemeanor with the racist comments he made, he would be nothing. So what I'm getting at is that sometimes you've got to be able to do the right thing no matter what. You know, and if people don't like you, that's not an issue. That the issue is, are you doing the right thing? And if you are, then they have to support you. And that's really important. And that's not what we're getting. It's that whole concept of we don't like him, we don't want him. Yeah. It's very much that very perception of they're going to be problems, let's get rid of them. But that's always been the case. It was case when you know, they got rid of me. But I hadn't done anything wrong. The only thing I did was have a go at them. Because what they were doing was disgraceful. And it'll come out. It'll come out. The problem is they can either deal with it in a proper professional manner, or they can deal with it in public, just the same as cricket have had to deal with the racism issue, and football, you know, where some of the managers who were involved with female players, that's all coming to the fore. You know, athletics, the abuse, swimming, the abuse. It's just nonsense. It'll come out. Now, you either think, right, we've got a bag full of shit. We've got to deal with this, right? Let's sit down with people and we'll sort this out. Otherwise, they're going to get covered with it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the issue.
Well, there is a shitstorm due on the 23rd of August when our special show goes out.
Well, you know, but Johnny, should it come to that?
No, it shouldn't. And don't forget, we rolled out the red carpet. We travelled down to them. We were the ones that reached out. We still got it. We still got a copy of it. We had a 6-page document of all the things that we as ex-internationals have spotted that are not doing right, things that are broken, things that are wrong. Didn't even get through a page of that document in that meeting. It was like sitting in front of an MP.
Yeah.
The barricades were up straight away.
Yeah, but they don't want, you know what? It's a fear factor of, you know what, we're going to get found out. So let's bullshit. Let's have distractions. and you can't do that. You know, I go back to my early days. The sport is great. The people in it are great, and it's you know, it's developed so much. You know, right from the tires blowing up to where the chairs are now. You know, and there are kids out there who I mean, I'll come back to this kid Langdon. What an unbelievable, complete player, but his attitude needs some sorting out. And I don't mean in a nasty sense, but you know what? He needs people like yourselves to sit him down and say, this is what you can achieve. And you know, with your track records, with your background, you know, you've got to be out there. You've got to get out there like Gordon does and sit down with kids and say, this is what you can achieve. Let's help you get there.
Can't do it when you're banned.
Sorry?
Can't do it when you're banned.
Well, but you know what? Who cares? You know what? Who actually cares? You know what? But it's I come back to it. This is more about them than you.
Yeah, I know.
What, you know,
I think, Rob, the problem, we rolled out the red carpet to them, yet they've come out and attacked us for no reason, but we're criticising the things that they're doing wrong. And it's really weird now, over the last few months, everything we've criticised that they're doing wrong, all of a sudden, they're doing.
Right from the word go, one of the major things we said was, why is there no one disabled on the board? Literally weeks after, Joe Bezic and Claire Griffith were put onto the board. So,
yeah, see, you know, but you talk about where it all went wrong. Okay, I think what had happened was when like I go back to that time when the transition happened. We go back to, you know, the people I spoke about, Sarah's mum, you know, up at Vicky and you know, Harry Brown's mum and all these guys. They were part of a club and they wanted the best for basketball. What then happened was a lot of people got onto the board who were more interested in what their kid or what their family member, what they wanted for them, what was best for them. And it wasn't best for the sport.
yeah.
It became very insular. It was very much, we'll make a decision, which is not good for the sport, but it's best for my friend or my son or my daughter or whatever. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it all drifted away because the people that we perceived were good for the sport weren't. They were only good for selfish reasons, you know. And you know, there was a paper came out from Nottingham University about sort of people who were self-centered. You know, they were only interested in themselves. Now, you know, you go to Michael Jordan, great player, but he took the team with him with his work ethic.
Yeah, he did.
A lot of people, they're individual players. You know, you look at Ronaldo's story, you know, he went to Man United. All of a sudden, he sees Neville's and all these guys training more, getting there before leaving afterwards. So the work ethic changes. So they become more involved in it. What had happened was, it was very much, you know, we want our person in that team. We want a person to be selected, and they would do anything to make that person selected at the expense of other people and at the expense of the whole program, expense of the whole team. So everything happened. It was more about them, what they wanted, and the selfishness rather than the sport. And we going back on that whole hamster wheel. You know, it's constantly going back to where we don't want it to be. It's that selfishness.
Mm.
You could have people on the board, but then you've got to ask a question: why them? Why not you?
Well, that's the question.
Right? You know what? If it was me, the first thing I'd say is, right, I want you two on the board because you're creating a lot of shit. Let's see what you can do. And all of a sudden, you show them what you can do. And that's the problem. Is basically, you know, we take people we don't like to the executioner's block, you know, get rid of them, and they'll just go away.
Yeah.
But you know what? 2010, they had a go at me. I'm coming back at them now. And karma's a bitch. I mean, it'll kick you right in the nuts. You know? And that sort of thing.
I like that.
So, yeah. But you can only, you know what, you can only live with certain things for so long, and then you say, no, I've got to say something now.
Yeah, and that's us. We want to take back the game. That's all. We want to take back the game, make the game better. Make
Yeah,
it
but
better
then,
everywhere, in all aspects of it. Look at our game. If you look at it now, Bob,
yeah,
look at our game. We go into this year's Paralympics with the least amount of teams there ever been in a Paralympics. Because
it's just nonsense. But
it's
it all
bonkers.
goes back, it all goes back to that storm that I spoke about. You know, I call it the, you know, the perfect storm, but it was a shit storm. You know, and how can you have 8 teams going to the Paralympics? Is it 8? Forgive me if I got that wrong.
Eight men's now from 12.
What are you achieving? You
I don't
know,
know.
No, but this, don't forget, this is lucky. This is apparently lucky. We've got 8 teams. The sport itself wasn't going to feature because of this rift between IWBF and the IPC over the classification problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
I think IWBF personally bottled it, because what would the Paralympics be without the sport that's been there from the beginning?
yeah, but then you see what I said, you know, the blue ribbon event now is wheelchair rugby. You know, I mean, they had the championships in UK. Was it last year or the year before? Televised, everything. We don't get it anymore. Go on YouTube, you can see it.
Yeah.
And that's the sad bit. I mean, you remember, go back to, was it Channel 4 that had the Big 8 or whatever
Yeah.
it was?
And
You know?
the thing for me, Bob, is I think wheelchair rugby, especially in Britain and that, they've overtaken wheelchair basketball, because the people that the CEOs that have been in charge have been asleep at the wheel. They've just taken our sport for granted.
I wouldn't say they're asleep at the wheel. I would turn around and say they were completely useless.
I'm just trying to be
Yeah,
kind.
I would say they're completely useless, because you
So-
see what I mean?
Yep, definitely, and we're definitely not going to do that. So now, Bob, one of our final questions. I've given you a blank
Sure.
sheet of paper. I'm giving you a blank sheet. There ain't nothing on it, right?
Right.
Just see, there ain't nothing on it. You can see it. Your job now is to turn around wheelchair basketball. Where do you start? Where are you going to start?
I would basically go back to the people I know who are passionate about it. You two, you go back. You know, I've seen Colin a couple of times. I'd go back to the guys who were there, were really strong, and say, right, okay, let's put something together, a program together, which will basically get us to where we need to be. Because you see, it's like business, it's like government, whatever you say. People will come out with strategies, okay? And if they haven't got people who will implement that strategy, then you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to be in the same place as you were before, okay? You go back to say, where were the golden days of this sport? Okay, these are the guys who were involved. Let's get together and say, okay, we were involved then. Where do we want to be now? Right, now let's put the program in place. Would you want to do this? Would you want to do that? Would you want to be involved? Okay, let's go. Let's have a 1-year plan. Let's have a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan. But you've got to have the people who can implement the strategy to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing. So what you have to do is go back to the people who had the passion to do it and bring them in and say, look, we know, A, you have the passion, B, you have the fight in it, and I know that you'll achieve it because you've got so much to offer.
Yeah.
And that's where I would be. I would seriously be starting all over again and saying, right, this is what we need. We need, you know, we need Saint on there. We need John on there. You know, we need Colin on there. You know, all these guys. We need them on there and start again. Because without you, the sport is nothing. I mean, I know because, you know, I refereed you both. I watched you both play.
Yeah.
You know, and we crossed swords. But at the end of the day, you know, we have mutual respect, hopefully. You know?
And we're all outside the sport now.
Yeah.
Seeing it broken, trying to get it to fix it.
Yeah, because you didn't want to be part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because it's very quickly, you basically, you seep into what the problem is. So when you're a solution, you then don't fight it. You become part of the problem, right, rather than the solution itself.
Yeah.
And that's the really important thing. But that's what I would do, Saint. Seriously, I would go right back to the people who are passionate about the sport and say, right, where do we need to take this? And there are loads of other people around. Colin Brummage is still involved with Oxford. He does quite a lot of stuff there. Guys like Jack Davy, Davis or whatever his name is. He's a great kid. Pete Bull. Who are the two, the married couple from Birmingham way? The tall guy plays.
Who's that?
I know. I do know who you're talking about. I can't remember his name.
Yeah. So you've got to go around the country, because you can't just have it based in one part of the country, because everything is slightly different. The way people do things is different. You get a group of people, like-minded people, who want to achieve something, and you sit down and you put a program together, and most importantly, you have leadership. Not someone as a ruler, but you have leadership. And that's the most important thing. Once you have leadership in the sport, you'll achieve anything.
Yeah, I agree.
And finally, because we've not actually talked anything about what the hell is a black Asian man doing on the bloody Everest. Are you lost your mind? Are you crazy? God damn it, you crazy? And to carry on with that, I have absolutely loved those pictures of you up there doing all of those things, because I always wondered, where's Bob? And then we see you on Everest and all of this, and then I look at him and go, what a stupid man there. He's so that place is so cold up there.
You're a great judge of character, aren't you? Well, actually, I was supposed to be on K2 right now, but I didn't get my visa. I was supposed to be on Everest this year, but my daughter got married, so I had to be there.
You're not thought about taking her up to Everest and have the wedding up there?
Listen, mate, I tell you what. They have their nails done twice a month. You know what? You seriously think that they would be? if you could climb Everest and Christian Louboutins, he would do. But I don't think that's going to work.
No, it's not.
But I've got. The thing is this: like next year, I've got a load of climbs, and I'm hopefully away very soon again. So hopefully by March next year, only 4 people have done it before. I'll have climbed all the highest mountains, North and South Pole, and all the highest volcanoes. But you know what? The great thing is we raise a lot of money, for causes, and that, I mean, 2012, I raised over £1 million to buy the Da Vinci robot machine for Chase Farm Hospital to treat prostate cancer. That sort of stuff. And then there's been loads.
What machine was that again?
It's called Da Vinci robot machine. Seriously, for prostate cancer. So that was the important thing. But we've got this Nishcam SWAT thing coming up in October. We leave on the 3rd of October, so we've got 30 odd people on there. Get to base camp. They raise a few 100,000. They can go out and feed the homeless, look after them, that sort of stuff. I think with me, it's very much you do it and you walk away and you look over your shoulder, smile, and think, I did that. And it's nice. And I think it's what you're doing with the sport. I like to do as well. You're not getting paid for this. You're giving up your own time to do good. And people don't realize that you're doing good. But you know what? And I'll finish with this, and I don't want to talk. But people never remember the horse that carried you to victory. Everyone's always patting people on the back, but it's the horse that carried you to victory is the most important thing. And you know what? You'll be the 2 stallions who'll ride this to victory. That's the important thing. And
that give me goosebumps there.
And you've never been called a stallion before, have you?
No, definitely not. Stallion. More like a donkey.
The Lancashire stallion. I
wasn't going to say nothing, But I think that's the important thing. I mean, you look at. I go back to Gordon again. He's the horse that's ridden everything. The work he does with Battle Back, the work he did with wheelchair sport, the work he did with the marathon, the wheelchair marathon. You know, myself with involved with, you know, with Aspire, with Stoke Mandeville, that sort of stuff. You know, let me put it this way: that would have been a housing estate.
Yep.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
for
have
sure,
existed.
for sure.
If,
So
if I hadn't done what I did, you know, it would have been. But you know what? And no one will remember the horse. I mean, there are only two horses that I remember: Napoleon and Alexander the Great. They were the only two horses that I remember. But all the work that other people do, you know, you go back to sport. You know, look at John Stainton. You know, he did a load of stuff, load of great stuff. You know, but we've got to recognise. Sometimes you've got to sit down and recognise people for what they achieved, because that small input made a massive difference.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, for you, you know, well, kudos to you for what you're doing, because it needed it. And I don't think people realise that it really did need it. I mean, it's needed it for over 14, 15, 20 years. It's needed it.
Yeah, it has.
You know, and good. I'm pleased you're doing it. And I'm, you know, good to always forget everything else, but it's always good to catch up anyway.
it's always good to catch up. But so, well, finally, when you're up on that mountain, there's got to be a Delinquents flag. We're gonna have to send you a flag. So you got to put it up on the top of that Everest. So we've climbed Everest together.
Too right.
We've climbed Everest.
I'll be on the South Pole soon anyway, so hopefully get there.
You got to give us a shout on the South Pole.
Send us a picture with a laminated delinquent poster saying we were there.
You were there. Yeah.
It has been, you know what? It's been absolutely amazing to talk to you.
Yeah, it has.
Great insight of what you want to do and what you've been doing. You just keep doing exactly what you're doing, raising all that money for all of those wonderful charities, you know.
Yeah.
Whatever you're going to do.
Good luck with your dossier.
Yeah, we're backing you all the way as you are backing us all the way. It's time to take back our game. And that's where I'm going to leave it.
I don't think it. I think what you've got to look at is basically it's time to do the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the important thing. You know.
It's been absolutely fantastic, Bob. The Delinquent Show has been delighted to have you as our first guest, and I think the people are going to love what you got to say.
Yeah, so do I.
Be safe. Take care of yourself.
Hey, John, say hi.
Yeah,
Hi to Dad. All right, and you take care, guys. Always good to catch up. And
yeah,
if you're ever down this way, you know, always give us a shout. I won't be around.
Yeah. See you, Bob.
See you, Bob. Take care of yourself.
Take care. Bye.
Got drama, the saga continues. We ain't going